conference on in the UN?
El tema de la conferencia. It's on indigenous issues. It's a permanent forum on indigenous issues.
On indigenous teaching?
Issues, yeah.
Cuestiones indígenas.
Thank you.
Te preguntan cuál es el tema.
Pero podemos hablar de que son varios temas. El tema de la lengua, el tema de los megaproyectos, el otro es el de consentimiento libre. Ajá. Y autonomía. Ajá.
Yeah, okay. So this year's conference has 4 thematics or 4 themes, which has to do with autonomy, self-determination, language or rights to indigenous languages,
Y los corporativos, ¿no?
and the work of multinationals all over in indigenous territories in the respect of our rights. These are the 4 main themes of this year's event.
What were they again, Manuel?
Self-determination and autonomy, that's one. Language, multinationals, and
Is that the environment?
yeah, it's all related. Yeah.
The environmental.
And in respect of the rights of indigenous peoples, and it's a sport.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm playing the role as an interpreter for Nora.
And you're doing
And,
muy bueno.
Yeah. So sorry if I'm changing from Spanish.
What is your name again?
¿Cuál es tu nombre?
Mi nombre es Nora Tzec, soy indígena maya del sur de México, de Campeche, o desde el pueblo maya del sur.
I am an indigenous woman from Campeche, Mexico, from the Maya people.
Wow.
Gracias, bienvenidos.
Gracias.
So what is your, in New York City, what's the goal, what's the way you're gonna try to achieve these goals?
¿Cuál es nuestra meta en Nueva York? ¿Cómo queremos conseguir estas metas?
Bueno, nosotros y nosotras pertenecemos a una organización indígena del sur que se llama Kuxtal Much Meyaj y significa volver a organizarnos. Y somos de varias comunidades de la región maya de Campeche. Estamos en el centro de la península, un poco al sur, junto a Guatemala. Y nuestro objetivo, nuestro trabajo principal es la conservación en un principio, pero luego la defensa de las semillas nativas. Ya no le digo nada más.
So we are members of an indigenous organization, Kuxtal Much Meyaj, and the meaning of it is to reorganize ourselves, or maybe the rebirth of organization, something like that. And so our main objective as an organization is to recover and to preserve the native seeds.
Y bueno, estábamos principalmente recuperando las semillas y en esos años, hace como 15 años, llegaron a nuestra región las semillas transgénicas, la corporación Monsanto. Y lo que hacían era primero hacer a un lado el maíz, a desplazar el maíz, y luego con las semillas de soya transgénica empezó a haber mucha afectación en la región. Mi región es, por vocación, es agrícola, con la milpa, con maíz, hortalizas, otras semillas que nos dan alimento como pueblo, y apicultura. Cuando llega Monsanto, casi acaba con la apicultura, ¿no? Entonces es cuando como organización nos levantamos a protestar.
Okay, during our work of defending and recovering the seeds, some multinationals have arrived at the area. And so basically our work is mainly agriculture, traditional agriculture in the area, and also working with honey and bees in the area. But when these companies arrived, like Monsanto mainly, they started to destroy our livelihoods there, and then this is why we started this struggle, basically triggered by these multinationals 15 years ago.
Hace 15 años.
Hace 15 años.
Más o menos 15, 20.
15, 20 years ago.
How did they destroy your livelihood?
¿Cómo destruyen nuestros medios de vida en las multinacionales?
Primero llegan a la región diciendo que la producción campesina es muy poca, que eso no da para comer a muchas familias, y empiezan con complicidad del gobierno a regalar semillas que no son propias. Y regalan semillas, regalan agroquímicos, regalan estos famosos paquetes tecnológicos y empiezan a acostumbrar al pueblo, a la gente de nuestro pueblo a consumir de manera gratis estos paquetes y a desplazar a nuestras semillas originarias. Otra es que en la región hay una población asentada de colonos que bajan del norte del país y les dan tierras para poder asentarse y hacer una agricultura a gran escala con monocultivos. Y esto empieza a ser el referente para una agricultura diferente en la región.
Yeah. Okay, so basically the companies started arguing that the way of campesino cultivation was not good enough to allow our survival as peoples. So they brought new seeds, modified organisms, and they started giving away these seeds for free. I mean, giving them for free to make people dependent on them. And at the same time, this GMO were displacing our native seeds and making the people stop cultivating the native seeds, so they were disappearing. And mainly they were using getting the seeds from and the agrochemicals from these companies, and at some point they started selling it. But this was the beginning, and at the same time they allow other peoples to come into the area with the same seeds, with the same GMOs, to cultivate in a larger scales, more industrial, in a more industrial ways.
Decir que también esa es una principal afectación, el desplazamiento de las semillas y de la alimentación propia, pero en esta presión para poder abarcar más territorio han destruido zonas de selva. Somos el municipio más deforestado del sur del país también, y la introducción de los agroquímicos ha generado mucha contaminación, no solamente en las semillas por los cruces, sino la contaminación del agua. Actualmente, respondiendo a su pregunta, nuestro objetivo de estar aquí es hablar sobre la contaminación de nuestra sagrada agua en el sur de México.
So the main impact on our livelihood is related to the seeds displacement because of the large expansion of of agriculture, industrial agriculture, and they were not only destroying the jungle, but they were also affecting the environment with the chemicals. And indeed, in our area, we are suffering the destruction of the jungle in a large scale, and we are like the number one in our country in numbers of hectares of jungle being destroyed. So these cultivations were not only affecting the seeds, but also they were polluting the water. So one of the main goals, in response to your question, is here to denounce the contamination, the pollution of our sacred water.
Actualmente en la región desde hace 3 años, como ya hay zonas extensas de mecanizados, le dicen a los lugares donde siembran los monocultivos, porque es un lugar plano, de fácil fumigar con maquinaria y aéreo también. Empezaron a introducir la siembra de arroz en una región donde no es apta para el cultivo de arroz porque demanda mucha agua. Entonces, eso es lo que está actualmente pasando en la región. Están sobreexplotando el agua de los mantos acuíferos del sur, y pues es una reserva, es la segunda reserva de agua dulce a nivel de América Latina después del Amazonas, el sur de México.
Yeah, in the last 3 years, the mecanizados, which is the way we call the large scale of monocultures, are now using also large scale fumigation. How do you say?
Herbicides,
Sorry?
fertilizers.
Fertilizers in a aerial way with small planes, and this is one part of the problem, and the other is the cultivation of rice in a large scale as well, which requires so much water, and we are, in our area, we are not a place able to support this kind of cultivation, so it's not for rice, but they are over-exploiting the aquifers of the ground and polluting them, and this, what we have on the ground is the second reservoir of water in the whole water in the whole in Latin America. In Latin America, besides the Amazon basin, so we have a really huge reservoir of water, and this is what they are polluting.
Y regresando a los medios de vida, no solo nos quitan nuestro alimento, porque hacen un lado nuestra alimentación tradicional, nos quitan la salud, porque estos monocultivos también acaban con nuestras plantas medicinales. En su afán de ganar más territorio para sus monocultivos, también terminan con nuestros sitios sagrados, contaminan el agua, la tierra, y obligan a nuestros jóvenes a migrar a las ciudades porque no hay trabajo para ellos en el campo.
Yeah, so going back to the livelihoods, they are destroying our foods because of the displacement of the native seeds. They are also threatening our health because of the pollution, and also because of the destruction of the medicine plants in the jungle. And they are also destroying our sacred places in the area. And also this way of cultivations are forcing the youth to migrate to the cities.
When you say medical plants, you're not talking about hospitals, you're talking about plants from the jungle
Yeah, right.
that you use medicinally.
Yeah. Pregunta que cuando hablamos de plantas medicinales no hablamos de que hay unas comercios de las que hay en la selva, ¿no? Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. If I, so if I may, I just wanted to make a brief explanation on it, because what we have in the jungle is mainly medicine for us. So there are plants and trees that we use for food, but also at the same time as medicine. And these were cultivated by our ancestors, and this is how our elders teach us as well. They said that around the sacred places there is an abundant, it's abundant on medicinal plants because they were planted before by our ancestors. So this is in the middle of the jungle now, and this is what they are destroying with the industrial cultivations and monocultures. Yeah. Just wanted to point that out.
Yo no sé si tú quieres decir algo más, que no vas a estar traduciendo.
No, lo que expliqué ahorita es que destruyen nuestras plantas medicinales que plantaron las abuelas y los abuelos alrededor de los sitios sagrados, y que pues nosotros las usamos para comer también, los árboles, y como medicinas, y que con los monocultivos pues todo eso lo están destruyendo, ¿no? Es lo que añadí
No sé qué más vas a añadir.
Okay. Pronto. Do you have any other questions?
So what does it mean that they don't, what does it do to you that they don't recognize your language? How does that means the government doesn't, if the government puts out something as a policy, it doesn't get written in your language, or is it more significant than that? Or
Yeah, con la lengua. Si quieres explico,
Sí.
respondo y...
Sí.
schools, at schools?
Yeah, the thing is that there are some policies that the state developed in last years, recognizing our right to our own language and so on. But the problem is that on the ground, all these policies don't work at all. Basically, because we are not taught in our own language at school. For example, in official institutions, we are not, or we don't have documents written in our own languages. We don't have translations, proper translations in our own languages. So the whole system is functioning based on the colonial language, which is Spanish. And there is a lot of discrimination also within the institutions when people want to talk in Maya language. There are many obstacles, and the people working in these institutions are also treating us with so much discrimination. Like, for example, in this trip, we wanted to bring the president of our organization, and she is an important elder, and she is speaking mainly Maya, so we thought it was important for her to appear here as in representation of our group. But when she was at the interview, she got a lot of problems because of the language. She couldn't speak Maya in our own region, right? And also at the embassy, there was another language, English, and even when the official language of the embassy in Mérida should be Spanish to attend Mexican people, they were all the time talking in English or very quick Spanish, so our president couldn't respond to that. So we needed a translator. A young woman from our own organization had to do that translation because there's none. There's any translator who can help us with that. So we have to figure out how to do it. So in general, the structure is functioning based on the colonial language, and that, because it's problematic.
What percentage of the population are the Maya in Yucatan and then in Mexico more generally?
What is the percentage?
Yeah.
¿Cuál es el porcentaje de mayas en Yucatán?
Hace 10 años, en el 2010, era el 60% de la población y en este último conteo de censo bajó a 40. Nosotros vemos que hay una relación entre el número entre la preservación de la lengua y las prácticas campesinas tradicionales y los medios de vida relacionados al pueblo indígena. Si se pierden las prácticas, se está perdiendo también la lengua, porque el espacio en donde se cultiva, se siembra, se vive la cultura, también se está perdiendo. Entonces no hay esa transmisión a los niños y niñas y a las juventudes.
So it's in 2010, according to the official census, was 60%. In 2020, it decreased to
16 or 60?
60.
60%,
Sorry, 60,
majority.
60, yeah, majority. And in 2020, it decreased to 40%. 40. And Nora said
That's how
that
you wipe out a people.
that goes in relation to the practices too, because the agricultural practices or cultural practices are getting lost, and so the languages, and it's all related. So the language is being missed because of everything is missed as well. So it's proportional or goes together.
Is there large support among the population for the work you're doing, or is it general apathy? And what is the stance of the government? I'm sure Monsanto and the others are not just coming down there to be kind to the Mayan folks. I'm sure they're paying the government to come down and do this. So is there a lot of repression in the government towards the work you're doing?
Entonces, ¿cómo es el apoyo que tenemos? Hay un gran apoyo en general de la población, y cómo hay empatía por parte de otras organizaciones o personas. ¿Cuál es el rol del gobierno? Hay presión por parte del gobierno con respecto al trabajo que hacemos.
Hay preocupación de las organizaciones originarias, también que vienen de pueblos originarios, y nos está ocasionando que nos juntemos para luchar a favor de las semillas de la lengua, de las prácticas. Pero somos pocas organizaciones, porque hay también muchos productores que lo que buscan es el rendimiento de sus cultivos a costa de su propia salud. Están aumentando los índices de cáncer, de enfermedades relacionadas con la comida, pero eso no lo dan a conocer. El gobierno no le conviene dar a conocer esa información y promueve megaproyectos en la región, no solamente agrícolas, sino también en la cría de megagranjas de cerdos, que a veces pueden ser más que todo el pueblo completo. Y están llegando otras inversiones en el sur, que tiene que ver con empresas, con corporativos, que digamos que están invirtiendo porque quieren sacar energía, quieren extraer el agua, quieren comercializar sus semillas. Hay muchos cambios en el sur de México y el gobierno tiene la idea del capital, del desarrollo basado en la extracción y no le importa la vida de los pueblos indígenas.
So there is much concern on the organizations based mainly with indigenous organizations working in the area. Because of all these problems and the pressures, we are organized and we are working together, but we are few organizations in the area. Because the agriculture workers prefer production over the health of people, and indeed the government is not concerned with our problems. Instead, they are promoting mega projects such as big farms, windmills, energy projects, and there are many changes happening in our region because the government prefers or gives priority to capital, to extractivism over the life of people. This is one question.
Are you in contact with, thank you, organizations like the United Farm Workers in California, who have many issues with chemicals? And do you have any connection with, because Monsanto has a long and sad history. I remember Agent Orange during the war in Vietnam, and it's a very, very problematic corporation. And it's hurt many people, including American farmers, American workers, like the United Farm Workers. I know you're just beginning, but are you in contact with American organizations that have the same opposition to this Monsanto?
I'm just quickly translating. Que en Estados Unidos hay un foro de trabajadores unidos, ¿no? Que también han enfrentado problemas con la agricultura, con los agroquímicos, con Monsanto, ¿no? Con el famoso agente naranja, cuando había el glifosato. Sí. Y entonces pregunta si tenemos contacto con personas en los Estados Unidos que han enfrentado problemas similares. Básicamente que sabe que estamos comenzando, pero que si tenemos contacto con más organizaciones. Okay, I'm gonna try to answer that. Yes, we are building networks at different levels, at local level with different communities. Indeed, our assembly is made of 16 different villages and communities, or members of these communities. And at regional level in the peninsula, we are also working in network with other indigenous organizations, Maya organizations, at national level too, with other indigenous peoples like Mije, the Maya in Chiapas as well, and other parts of the country. And we are also now expanding this network and working in collaboration with international organizations and international groups of indigenous peoples too in different countries. And indeed, we are now here at the Permanent Forum together with a coalition with a Mennonite church, a coalition on the dismantling of the doctrine of discovery. And in the past years, we started a collaboration with some organizations in California, mainly working with with agriculture as well, facing problems of agriculture. Yeah, so it's in general what we can say. So maybe that can and we will be happy to get in contact with other organizations, of course.
En términos de esta corporación, ¿es la esperanza para completamente eliminarnos del Yucatán o de estos diferentes pueblos o solo disminuir su influencia o cuánto trabajo tienen en las comunidades o completamente sacarlos?
Yo creo que lo que estamos viviendo tiene que ver con una política de exterminio directo. Quizás no quieran eliminarnos físicamente por el momento, pero pues nos están matando si nos quitan nuestros medios de vida y nos van a convertir en mano de obra solamente con el tiempo, ¿no? Están expulsando a los jóvenes, que eso es lo que se nos hace más grave porque las comunidades se están quedando sin jóvenes. Entonces va a llegar el momento que también desaparezcamos como comunidades, ¿no? Entonces creo que sí hay una política de unificar y de acabar con los pueblos indígenas y de tener la posesión de los territorios indígenas.
Can you translate that whole conversation?
Yeah, I'll try to do so. So what's your name? Sorry?
Es Sebastián.
Sebastian. Okay, so Sebastian asked that, what is the purpose of this organization? Is to threaten the people, right, or to exterminate people? Is it correct? What you want to?
Yeah. I was also wondering if the end goal of your movement is to is to push them out or to like just stop them from doing all the things they did.
Ajá, entonces la pregunta era si el objetivo de estas organizaciones multinacionales es expulsarnos, ¿no? No, de nuestra es sacarla a estas organizaciones del territorio. No, yeah, okay, so there was a misunderstanding in the question. And the response of Nora was more about the way these multinationals are threatening our livelihoods because they are not killing us physically, but by taking off our food, by expelling our youth to the cities, it will arrive the time when our communities will disappear. So basically, and she thinks that there is and I agree with her, that there is an intention from the state to exterminate us slowly as people. But the question was another. So you wanted to know what quería saber si nosotros queremos expulsar a estas compañías del todo.
Sí, puedo, claro. ¿Es usarlas completamente o solo prevenir que hagan ciertas acciones?
Okay. Yeah, so the question is whether we wanted to avoid them to make some particular actions or to expel them, and Nora's response was we prefer if they go away completely. Yeah, I think the problem.
Pero tú qué piensas.
Okay. So in I think that the problem is bigger, and it's not a problem of a company or a brand like Monsanto or now Bayer. There are many others, and it's a general idea of living and being in the earth that is indeed very toxic and destructive. So what we don't want to see in our territories is the invasion of this way of living on the earth. And we recognize the inheritance of our ancestors and how they are still, our elders are still living in our territories by respecting the creation, respecting Mother Nature, right? And this other way of living is not only threatening, but is violently attacking these ways of living, right? So it's not about one company, but I think it's more about this way of relating to nature. And yo sé que no es con la idea. Sí, okay. Not translation needed.
I'm just curious how many other indigenous groups are recognized at the UN?
At the UN?
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think there are thousands. Because it's not the United Nations who recognize indigenous people, but ourselves who self-identifies as indigenous peoples, and they have to accept our self-determination because it's our own right.
So you were there yesterday?
Yes, we were there yesterday.
And met many other groups?
Yeah, this year it's difficult because this is the first presential meeting after COVID. So indeed it's mixed, it's online and presential. And there are less representatives in comparison to the last year. For example, I think in Geneva and there were way more people. Sorry. And preguntaba cuántos hay en las Naciones Unidas. No, okay. No translation needed. Okay.
Oh, okay. I feel like certain like indigenous voices kind of, especially today, really like use social media and technology as a way of, leveling the playing field, because it allows for more like a greater audience to like hear about your plight and like your problems. And I'm just wondering if that's a tool that you're finding some measure of success in to have support, like just social media in general, or and like just the online community, and also if maybe like your community is technology itself accessible, or is it like hard to like be given to like every household or something.
Okay, dice que aquí las voces indígenas se están escuchando más, ¿no? Principalmente gracias a las redes, a los medios de comunicación, hay una mayor audiencia, ¿no? Pero también se pregunta si en verdad tenemos éxito, ¿no? También con la difusión, con los medios de comunicación, y si de hecho en nuestras comunidades tenemos acceso a las tecnologías, ¿no? Y sí, básicamente.
¿Qué te diría? Creo que poco a poco ha aumentado la visibilización. Ha ayudado que muchos jóvenes y jóvenes se han sumado a difundir lo que está pasando en sus comunidades, pero falta mucho que hacer. Incluso dentro de nuestras organizaciones no tenemos gente que se dedique a la comunicación, lo hacemos con nuestros propios medios y posibilidades. Creo que sí se podrían hacer más cosas, y es difícil llegar con información a las comunidades porque no hay ni siquiera señal de teléfono ni de internet, es una realidad. Pero usamos otras formas, como las asambleas, como las fiestas, reuniones, ¿no? Y otras estrategias es invitar a los jóvenes a escuchar estas pláticas para poder pensar en el futuro de sus territorios.
Yes, indeed, visibility has increased, and then indeed there are more young generations that have been working together with us. But certainly we need more people. It's not enough. So, for example, we don't have specialists for social media. We communicate with the means we have, and sometimes it's difficult to get access to people in the communities because of the lack of internet and other media. But we are using alternative ways of getting in contact, for example, with the assemblies or with the feast. The Feast of Seeds is one of the moments in which we gather together, and then we start talking about our problems and then also finding solutions. Indeed, we are having, this is not her response, but just a spoiler. We have our Seed of Feast in the coming weeks. So we can share with the house pictures of it and some videos. And yeah, so this is the way we, an alternative way to get in contact.
Is there an effort to create or why would the Mexican government not recognize a language that is spoken by so many people? I don't know how many 40% is of what that means in terms of numbers of people, but why wouldn't they recognize it? And is there a movement to make Mexico to recognize other languages, kind of like in France you have English and French as the official languages of Canada?
¿Por qué México no reconoce los idiomas de todos los pueblos que tenemos, y no sé si hay algún movimiento para convertir los idiomas indígenas en idiomas oficiales en nuestro país, ¿no? Que sea Okay. Yeah, I think on the paper the country recognized the existence of our languages and recognized the exercise of our languages. But this in the practice, when they are attacking every day the maintenance of our language, as I mentioned before, there's no structure where we as Maya speakers can get or in contact with the institutions. So there is no means, and indeed it all starts in the families. Our parents try to teach us as much as they can our own language, but if we start learning Spanish since we are in the kindergarten, at elementary school, if we face discrimination every day by speaking our language or speaking Spanish with an accent that reminds our language, all these problems are not addressed by the government, but by the state. They are not creating, for example, a campaign of sensibilization of general society for the language, for our language, right? They are not implementing educational programs at elementary schools to indeed teach in Maya language, right? And there is enough people, I believe, that there is enough people who can teach the language at elementary school. But there is any initiative from the government side, and it is indeed a long-term movement of resistance to preserve the language, but this movement comes only from the community basis. It's only by our elders, our parents, who are resisting and are trying to teach us. Also some organizations that are teaching the language, but it's not official, without any budget, only donations of our own contributions as volunteers.
We're obviously a very small group. How could we help you, if at all?
Como grupos,
Creo que estar en contacto es importante. Ayer platicábamos con Carmen un poco también la lucha que ustedes tienen. Nosotros vamos a platicar con nuestra organización lo que ustedes han hecho en tantos años y lo que están haciendo actualmente por su pueblo. Y para nosotros es una muestra de que no estamos solos y solas, estamos conectados con querer un mundo diferente. Y pues podemos tener contacto, publicaciones, ahorita con las redes. Creo que es importante también mirar otras formas de resistencia.
Yeah, mainly we can keep in touch, and yesterday we got to know about your struggle here. Thanks to Carmen, he gave us a brief explanation on it, and we are communicating your struggle to our people as well, and your struggle is also important and inspiring for us, so that's also helpful. And I missed the last part.
Vamos a tener en contacto con las redes también para difundir información y poder empezar a ver que no estamos solos y que llevar la palabra a la asamblea.
Sí. Yeah, so we are also sharing this among our networks, and to let them know that we are not alone. We have some allies.
Un tiempo más, ¿qué es el nombre de su grupo?
El nombre de nuestra organización.
Es Kuxtal Much Meyaj, es un nombre maya que significa volver a organizarnos o el renacer de la organización. Sí, eso es un significado. Tenemos una página de Facebook y tenemos también una web. Es un poco rudimentaria, pero nos ha servido para difundir información. Y también hay una red de jóvenes que actualmente están tomando los medios para poder difundir las cosas que pasan en las comunidades. Y puedo dejar los datos también.
Me estudié en la universidad.
Pues igual cuando haya oportunidad de que vayan a México y llegar al sur, ahí estamos y nos encantaría recibirles y que conozcan más de lo que estamos haciendo. Yo sé que en algún momento nos vamos a volver a cruzar, en los caminos se encuentran y pues ahí estamos y también valoramos mucho el trabajo que ustedes hacen aquí en este espacio colectivo.
So we value the work you are doing here, and if you happen to visit the south of Mexico, we will be happy and glad to receive you. You have another house there, another home there, and in our organization we have a website too, in which we share some news and communicate some of the issues in our community. So we disseminate information there, and we are going to share it here as well. mucho.
Like communications in English?
Con
No, but we are in this trying
To do that.
to make it bilingual, no, trilingual now, and because our network is expanding now, and we are also trying to communicate in English. So now I'm doing part of the job that, and we get some support. For example, Lars is often helping us in the translation and interpretation too. So we have some publications both in English and Spanish. So if you visit our web page, you can see them. And in the future, we will try to make the introduction of our organization in English and Maya too, so most people can get access to it.
I was wondering, has the recognition of climate change sort of changed the landscape for you? I would think groups like your own would gain a great deal more attention. I mean, it does seem like after the last several hundred years, it was the indigenous people that had it right, and the colonizers that are destroying Mother Earth.
Yeah, right. There are numbers. There are some scientific studies showing how climate change has increased.
Más rápido.
Yeah, in the last 5 centuries, right? And also in the last decades, since this neoliberal thinking started. For example, there are some areas in central Mexico where we can see that mining is impacting several times more than the 200 years of colonization by Spain. Right? So the impact of now of the neoliberal companies, mining, this, monocultures, everything is impacting more than, for example, 200 years of extraction by the Spanish crown, right? So it is very alarming.
I don't impacto de COVID. Did COVID have a more was that very impactful to the what the companies were doing down there?
Sorry.
No. Was there did COVID have an effect on what was going on down there? I don't know if somebody already asked that.
Sí, el COVID impactó pasando ahí.
Sí impactó como a todos y todas, pero fue aprovechado también para evitar que los pueblos sean consultados por los megaproyectos en el sur. Ellos no pararon de trabajar para poder establecerse, pero por otro lado nosotros no nos dejaban juntar.
Yeah, indeed, COVID impacted, and when they were making consultations, they took advantage of the pandemic to get results. So I'm trying to summarize. But also, I am aware of the problem, and they were forcing people to gather to vote in favor of their projects, but at the same time they didn't allow us to gather in our groups and assemblies. So it was the way they were using the pandemic to.
I guess it's related to the climate change question. You mentioned before, what are your sacred spaces, and is that say different from say another space that allows you to cultivate your seeds and stuff like that? Is it the same or different?
Okay, yeah, sí, hablas sobre los sitios sagrados. ¿Cuáles son los sitios sagrados?
Adelante. Expert.
No, she called me the expert. I'm not the expert, but I started I started learning from our elders in our communities, and I started studying mainly the buildings, the pyramids, as heritage. But all of a sudden, I realized that these were indeed sacred places because of what our elders were teaching us. They were making ceremonies there, and even though there was a persecution in colonial times and also in the recent decades, but there are still ceremonies being performed in these places. So at the beginning I thought it would be nice to register in a map those buildings or those places where our communities are making ceremonies. And we started doing with the community, with the team, with Kuxtal and all the others. And when we did some workshops to list a number of sacred places, they started adding like a cave, like a stone, like an area of medicine plants, not only the buildings that I was focusing on mainly, but many other places, many other places. And it was enlightening when Don Gaspar, one of the members of our assembly, made a ceremony before we enter into the jungle to ask for the permission of the guardians of the jungle. And he was saying that all this area is sacred, so all the jungle is sacred, all the territory is sacred. Mm-hmm. And then by referring to water as holy water in our language, it is also the way they are saying this is also a sacred place where the water is, cenote. So in the end, I think that the message from our elders is that all our territory is sacred. Everything is sacred. Mm-hmm. Everything has a spirit, and everything should be treated as sacred. I'm not sure that I answered the question, but that's a beautiful answer. Yes. Todo acelerado, ¿no? Porque empezamos a mapear los edificios, las escuelas, la selva y al final es todo lo que todo acelerado.
How much longer are you in New York?
5 days. So Lars knows more better.
No, Friday.
Right?
Still Friday.
Yeah. Yeah, like that's what, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us and to share this rich tradition and bring us into the. We're so grateful to you that you're with us.
No, thank you. I agree with Nora. Well, thank you for hosting us here, and I agree with her that when we knew your history, the things you are doing, for us it's inspiring. As she said, it shows that we are not alone, that we are working, we are struggling, we are fighting in our own trench, but towards similar directions, right? Fighting for injustice and rights. And so thank you so much. It's really, really inspiring to be here. I'm really, really glad. And I agree with Nora. Thank you. Thank you.
And honored to have you.
We've got lunch.